Yesterday, I was on Twitter and I saw a trending topic that I haven't seen this person's name in a while. And last year, I remember that there was a little, maybe a little kerfuffle with him and some of his properties during the pandemic, and he had shut the doors to them. And so I clicked on it and I said, what could the world possibly be talking about Joel Osteen for it to be trending on Twitter? There's our friend Joel Osteen right there, right? Joel Osteen wants you to know, woo, let's go. Inflategate, baby. Everyone's getting rich. Now, Joel Osteen, as I clicked on it, I started to read, and people were saying all kinds of crazy stuff. Maybe we'll pull up a couple of those tweets in a little bit. But I started to go down a Joel Osteen rabbit hole, and what I found was interesting, to say the least. So Joel is the senior pastor at Lakewood Church. He says that his income comes from book sales, and he lives in Texas, where he's got no state income tax. Well, that makes sense. But then the more and more that I dug, I started to see some pretty crazy stuff. So we're going to pull up a couple of pictures here, and then we're going to explain a little bit about our friend Joel Osteen, who might be the greatest beneficiary of Inflategate out of anyone. So Mr. Joel Osteen has a massive mega church that he, when I say mega, like literally,
it's the old Rocket Stadium.
He has an entire arena that literally musicians would die to be able to fill their arenas like this. And there's Joel. You can barely see him. He looks like a little speck. That's how big the place is. And he's got his big screen, not quite as big as Jerry's World over at Cowboy Stadium, but pretty large. And he is preaching the good word to what appears to be thousands, if not tens of thousands of people in this arena. Now, that seems to be what you would expect from one of these mega churches, right? But what you don't expect is that same guy is flying private. He drives a $325,000 Ferrari, and he lives in a home that can only be described as a college campus. That looks insane. And so Joel Osteen, this is his house supposedly, goes from the church where he's speaking the good word to living in this house. Now, what becomes fascinating to me about this is people are pissed. Right? And they're pissed for a couple of different reasons. One, he lives in that house. It's huge, looks nice. Here he is on a private jet, probably doing some business work, maybe reviewing a speech, reading the Bible, who knows. But obviously, when you hear of a pastor, a priest, or some sort of religious figure or clergy, you think that they likely are living a life of simplicity. But if you're driving a $325,000 Ferrari, if you're living in that house, you're flying on private jets, people start to ask questions. Then when they find out that you took a $4.5 or $4.4 million PPP loan, which most of it you didn't have to pay back, or almost all of it you didn't have to pay back, people get mad, right? They say, how is this possible? Now, here's a couple of interesting tidbits. One, churches in America don't pay tax the same way that a normal corporation would or an individual. That is okay. That is what the law states, is that they don't pay the taxes. I think Joe, you know a little bit more about his specific tax situation in terms of where his income comes from. But majority, if not all of his income is coming from book sales, which he is taxed on. So he pays his taxes and then he uses it to buy things. But he doesn't have a normal income. One of the things is this home. I think he makes like $40 or $50 million a year by selling these books. So it's crazy when you see a pastor has this, a pastor has a Ferrari, a pastor has these private jets, but majority of the wealth is actually coming from book sales. And so what becomes interesting to me is that most of his income, if not all of it, does not come from anything that is related to the church in terms of the church paying him income or anything there. It's more so around the revenue that is being driven from a business that he owns. And it's not the church business, it's actually a completely different business. Now, you can debate, and many people were debating, plenty of people were debating, is it right for him to be making that much money? Is it fair that he uses kind of religion and God and kind of all these various kind of emotionally charged things to then build an audience, to then sell them books and all of that? We're not here to debate any of that, but I want to hear what you two think about Joel Osteen ripping down the street in a Ferrari, flying private jets, living in a house that looks like a mega mansion of mega mansions in Texas, and then people roasting him on the internet.
Yeah, I think it's important to make clear, first off, we don't know if he's doing anything illegal, right? We have no idea. It seems like, I'm sure.
We don't think that he is. Like, there's nothing to suggest that that's true.
Yes. I think it's more, though, that people are up in arms and angry over the fact that he's a pastor and he's driving a Ferrari and he lives in a $10 million house and he flies on private jets.
That house only cost $10 million?
That's what they say, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
When he bought it.
Yeah, that was before Inflategate.
Yeah, he probably bought it from the church.
Bought it for $1.
Yeah, he probably bought it from them. But, well, people are claiming that online. I don't know if there's validity to that or whatnot, but people have joked in the past that the church owns the private jet and they own a bunch of the other stuff that he uses. But in reality, it is, he always gets a lot of credit for not taking a salary from the church. But the idea is, right, it's all marketing for him. He doesn't take a salary, so he's not taxed on that stuff, and he uses it as an avenue to sell books and do speeches and other engagements of that nature. So it says that he's written 14 books in total. He sold over 100 million copies, and last year he made around $50 million on books alone.
Okay. I mean, those are very, very, very big numbers, right? 100 million
and they claim his net worth
books?
Is only 60 million. That cannot be true.
Well, if he made 50 million last year, you can't have a net worth of 60 million. You've been doing this for more than 2 years, probably, right? Unless you absolutely spend money like a fish.
He's like, that's not my only Ferrari.
Do we have a picture? All right, there's the Ferrari, which John found this, I think, and this is a hysterical comment. For the record, we do not believe that he said this, but I live my life a quarter prayer at a time, which is an absolute unit of a Ferrari, $325,000 freaking thing. I mean, look, it's crazy when you start to think about a pastor, obviously having this level of wealth. If you were to say, hey, the guy is a book author who's one of the best-selling authors in America.
Yeah, it changes your entire thought process.
Right, okay. So it's the framing of it is very
entrepreneur,
important.
author, built a business, whatever. Yes. You wouldn't even care. You wouldn't question it. But I think it's more of an ethical standpoint of, hey, this guy's a pastor. How is he making this much money? Right?
Yeah. And it's because he owns a business. He's created products that he sells to people, all that. Everything that we understand, and we did very deep research over here at the Best Business Show research department. We were deep in the interwebs. We were all over the conspiracy theory forums.
Source is Google?
Yeah. Google is our best friend. We were looking for every single thing we could find. And for the most part, people are just pissed because he's rich. And there doesn't appear to be any sort of improprieties from what we could find. And majority of the wealth just comes from the book sales.
I give Joel a lot of credit because no matter what you believe, he's taken this church and absolutely exploded its following. He's put them on TV. They have an apparel line and a gift shop.
And he's not making money off that.
He doesn't make
money.
Yeah, he doesn't make money off it. He makes, like we said, the books and the speeches.
He's got his own apparel line. He's got his own books.
But it's crazy to see that a guy that took just like and not a relatively small church. I mean, they bought that Rocket Stadium, I think, for $7.5 million and put $100 million of renovations into it, which comes off of donations and growing the following, which I think Joel's done a great job with the church. And obviously he's done very well personally.
I mean, the part also to me that is fascinating here is if you start to talk about somebody like this as an entrepreneur or a business owner, right? To Joe's point, nobody would complain about that. No one would think that that's crazy. I do think that there's, because of the religion and the church and that aspect of it, that's what brings everybody into question. Another piece of it, though, is the PPP loan. Like, really, you took a $4.5 million PPP loan. You personally made $50 million last year. The church pays no taxes from all intents and purposes, from what we can tell from the outside, has done very well financially. And I think that's what really kind of rides people the wrong way. It's that rich people were able to use the government and the stimulus to get access to capital that they no longer have to pay back. And to me, if they didn't do that, it would be a little less salt in the wound, right? It might not actually solve the problem, but it'd be a little less salt in the wound. Now, one other aspect of this that I think is important, a big takeaway from it, is if he's actually doing what he says that he's doing, and there is no impropriety here, which again, whenever you get anywhere near these tax-exempt organization stuff, I always just chalk it up. I don't know what's going on. But if that is all true, it's a lesson for everyone else. The tax code ends up being one of the greatest differentiators between the people who can compound wealth very aggressively versus the people who can't. If you are paying 50% taxes to the government because you're in the highest income bracket and you're paying it all to taxes, that's going to make it much more difficult to build wealth than if you were only paying 30 or 40%. Now, we used an example in the past of Steve Ballmer paying a lower tax percentage than the concession stand worker. I think it was like 12% to 14%. But again, it goes back to the people who hold assets, whether they are businesses, they are real estate, or other types of assets. They have certain elements of the tax code that they can leverage to themselves. And so when I saw the Joel Osteen thing trending, and I sent it to you guys and said, hey, we should talk about this tomorrow, my general sense here was like, people get pissed off when they see this stuff. And instead, I think that the entrepreneurs, the problem solvers, they look and say, what is that person doing that they've figured out that is legal, that is allowed, that I should learn from? Right? That I should figure it out. And I can't remember which one of you said it last week, but the idea that the money you pay to your accountant is actually for them to teach you taxes rather than just to complete your tax records, right?
Yeah, that was me.
That was you with the young Warren Buffett over there hitting us with the knowledge.
He's got the receipts.
All right. Any last words about Joel Osteen? Can we pull up the original photo of Joel? I don't want to make it difficult on Matt, who's on the board over there, but I mean that is just woo. Let's go. That seems to me like would be a campaign slogan if Joel was running for president and just hashtag winning.